Hey y'all, it's Jordyn Swingle with Let's Just Be Real. In a world where we can put a spin and a filter on everything, this podcast is going to be raw and honest about all the things. And I do mean all the things. So, let's get to it.
Meet me at Taco Bell.
I should have never gone to college is what I should have never done.
I mean, I surely would have ended up dead or in jail.
What else can you do when you're avoiding your parents and you have nowhere to go?
And God was like, hold your horses.
Well, hi, y'all. Today's episode is one for the books, and I am so ready to talk about it. I want to rush through this because I want to get to all the things. But I have been thinking about this human being for a really long time. When we started this podcast, I thought about people that I wanted to hear from because their stories meant a lot to me personally and also would impact the people that listen to this podcast. And so I have my beautiful friend with me who is a mom of 4. She's an amazing musician. And her name is Bethany Torrez. Say hi.
Hello.
Yay. I meant that. I really did mean that. I made a list of people before I started the podcast that it was my dream list and you were on it.
That's very kind. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I always tell my guests that, oftentimes I know you guys, but they don't know you. Yeah. And so I want to get to the really high points in your story and the things that people are going to be like, oh my gosh, what? But I also want them to know you, right? So Where did you grow up? Who are you? Where are you from? Give me all the things.
Okay. So I grew up in this area, the Mid-Cities area. Grapevine, Colleyville.
Okay. Where'd you go to high school?
So I started at Colleyville Heritage and then ended at Grapevine.
Okay.
Yeah. So kind of bounced around.
Mm-hmm.
That was fun.
Do you have siblings?
Yeah, I have a sister, an older sister. She lives in Nashville, unfortunately.
Oh,
but
fortunate for her. It's
city. Yeah. Her husband's in music, so there's no convincing them to come back at this point.
Yeah, right. That's where you need to be.
Yeah, for sure. So grew up around here. I've been at our church for since I was 3.
We go to Church at the Cross in Grapevine, by the way.
Yeah.
Just shameless plug. Y'all should become members there because it's awesome.
Definitely.
You've been going there since you were 3? How did I not know that? So before it was Church at the Cross, right?
Memorial Baptist.
Memorial Baptist.
Oh, yeah. So I didn't go far. For sure.
Yeah, you moved from Grapevine and also a selfish plug. I was their realtor and they bought their absolute dream house.
It's the best.
Which I want to tell that story because that still gives me full body chills when I think about it. When you literally told me this is the house that God wants for us. And that house is under contract by somebody else. And you're like, well, this is the house. And 2 days later, they called me and said the buyer backs out and they want to go with you. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? It was still the wildest thing that ever happened.
When you called, I was in full meltdown mode.
Because you were so sad or because you were just
I was I don't know. I thought I heard God, but clearly I didn't if the house is under contract.
To be sold?
Yeah.
To someone else?
But then God was hold your horses.
Watch me work.
Phone call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's still so crazy.
I know.
So you grow up around here. Would you say that your upbringing was very normal?
That's a hard question to answer because for me, I was this is what everybody's life is except for extreme cases. But when I met my husband, that became very apparent that that's just not the case.
Yeah.
It was super normal to me. I mean, it's still, I would say it was really dreamy. I mean, my parents are believers and I was in a very loving home. I had every opportunity given to me. I mean, I wasn't spoiled rotten by any means, but
you were cared for.
Oh, I was nourished for sure.
Yeah.
My parents would say that they still do say that they made mistakes that they would change. But
I had liked to meet a set of parents that didn't.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I played sports. I was in music. Anything that I wanted to try, my parents were behind me 100%. And it was just really, we went to church 2 or 3 times a week. We did all the normal things for me.
Yeah. And then you met your husband, your now husband.
Yeah.
Who is so great. And I love him so much.
Yeah.
But when you guys first met, What was that like?
Things were not so good for me. Being that I grew up in a Christian home and my parents were so loving, and so, like, I don't know, they also held me to a standard that I didn't want to live up to.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I felt like I couldn't, but I know that I didn't want to.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister was like, you know, she cried the first time she got a C in high school. Like, it was just, she was perfect and she's the rule follower. And in my mind, it was like, I'm not that. So I'm going to be
the opposite.
And anything but. So in high school, I started like rebelling a little bit. I started smoking and hanging out with people that I shouldn't have been, because I also was like super bullied in school, and the people that accepted me were like the outcasts per se. And so I like dove head on into that group. And so by the time I was in my senior year, I ended up in an inpatient psychiatric hospital because I had attempted suicide, and I just was so unhappy. I felt like I didn't have any real friends, and even the friends I did have weren't like super nice to me, and
they probably also weren't well either. And just going through it like high school kids do, and then add in all the other elements, and drugs, and you know, all the things that affect you. So you end up in the psychiatric hospital.
Yeah.
How long were you there?
I was there for, I think, a little over a week. I can't quite remember. But that kind of started this pattern of like rebelling, being like truly unwell. You know, my parents like took me to every doctor, counselor, psychiatrist, and just trying to help me. And I saw it as them trying to fix me and change me, and it just caused me to push back more. And in hindsight, I don't know, as I think about
your own kids,
I wonder, like, would I not have done the exact same thing?
Likely you would.
Yeah.
Like you use all resources when your kid is either physically sick or mentally sick. You're like, let me pull out all the stops because they're good parents. But at the time, it's like, just let me be who I am.
Yeah.
And they're like, but this isn't the best version of you, and we know that.
Yeah.
So as an adult, are you able to look back and be like, and give them credit and grace?
Oh my gosh,
trying their best
so much.
Yeah.
So like I've told them a million times that I wouldn't have made it through my late teens, early 20s without them. I mean, I surely would have ended up dead or in jail.
Mm-hmm. Which, praise God, you didn't.
Yeah, it's a miracle, fully.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I wanted to be in a downward spiral pretty much, and I can't quite explain it. I think maybe it was just the chaos I felt like within my mind and within my heart. It's like I wanted chaos on the outside to match the inside.
Yeah. Which I think that makes sense to a lot of people who are currently in that mindset.
Yeah.
It's like misery loves company, and that's true.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure. And it's hard to be outwardly at peace when you're not inwardly at peace. And that, I mean, I had no peace whatsoever. And so I turned to drugs for peace, because a lot of times that's the only thing that would quiet my mind. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I mean, it makes so many people don't understand why people turn to drugs, because they totally tear apart your life. I mean, I won't deny that, but it was the only thing that made
shut your brain off.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the allure.
Yeah.
Right? It's
absolutely.
Like, if this is the only thing that gives me silence in a place where it's mayhem, I'm going to do it. And even if it's a short moment of gratification, like, I get it. I understand it 100%. Like, when I was having anxiety attacks and the diazepam that they had me on that would make me like loopy, it was very difficult for me to not become addicted to that, because I wanted my physical body to feel at peace.
Yeah.
The only way that I could do that was by taking that pill. And then I would panic when I didn't have it. And like, which is, thank God I don't have to take those anymore. But even then it was so difficult. Like those drugs are so addictive and I get it. I 100% see the allure and I understand it.
Yeah.
100%. So hold on. I'm going to lose it. Were you dating Ray at the time?
Not yet.
Okay. Keep going what you were going to say.
So I went off to college in Oklahoma, and that was my first like taste of freedom. I was out from under my parents' like constant watch because my mom is like super sleuth. Like I would have boyfriends and she would like,
I aspire to be that, by the way.
Right?
Yeah.
I remember one time there was this boy that I was just like, I was so obsessed with him. And my parents were not fans. He was older than me and out of high school. And I was like a junior or something. Or maybe it was when I was a senior. I don't remember. But I remember one time I told my parents I was like going to go get food or something. I did that all the time. I'd like, I'm just going to go get food, go to the store, get coffee, whatever.
Yeah.
And then like I'd be like texting my boyfriend, like, meet me at Taco Bell. And I remember one time we were just like sitting in the car because like,
what else can you do when you're avoiding your parents and you have nowhere to go?
Absolutely.
My God.
And I remember like we were like, we had the seats laid back and then my mom like pops up. I was
not
horrified. Yes.
I love that.
I mean,
5 stars for your mom.
I love it now.
Yeah, but back then I'm sure you would live it.
Gosh, I was suffocated.
Yeah.
Like truly.
Yeah.
But so, and I, when I was living with them, I was sneaking out and just doing everything I could to get out from under them.
Yeah.
Because they wanted so badly for me to be on the right path that they were like trying to force me into it.
Which I can empathize with.
Absolutely.
Like we want our kids to be disciplined. We want our kids to be safe and healthy. And like, I can only imagine, how they felt after your suicide attempts and those things. Like Absolutely. Our family endured some of that, not me personally, but watching that play out, like the trauma responses that come from it.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I can't imagine how they were feeling.
Well, and I, even as a mom to like, my oldest is 8. I already feel the push to want to control.
Oh, God, me too.
All the things. And so I can't even imagine. I mean, the Lord, I'm really praying that the Lord works on that through me before he becomes a teenager. But I can't imagine what that looks like when you start having a child that has freedom and has the ability to go out and do their own things without you. Like,
yeah, no.
Yeah. So in college, that was like my first taste of like my parents don't have an eye on me 24/7 and don't know where I am. And I just spiraled further. And
you did.
I was at a Baptist college and
what college was it? Oh, are you?
Baptist.
Oh, Baptist. Okay.
Yeah. And it just further emphasized, or maybe it made the gap further, but it made it more obvious that I was so different from
the people around you.
Yeah. It was very clear I was not them and I didn't fit in with them. I mean, I was the kid like smoking on the patio because there was a no smoking sign and I was going to be the one that was going to break that rule.
Oh my gosh.
So, meanwhile, I'm a vocal major.
You're like, what I would do to get back. Yeah. Same. I know.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Mom, I'm sorry, but I smoked cigarettes occasionally in high school and I regret it. Okay. There. I made my confession. Keep going.
I mean, surely who didn't?
I know.
But anyway, so after that year, I was like, I'm clearly not interested in school.
Yeah.
At least not to that degree.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll stay here. And I was kind of like questioning what I wanted to do. And so I was like, I'm just going to keep a year at home, do like community college.
Yeah. We all did it.
Yeah. I should have done it from the start.
I should have never gone to college is what I should have never done. But
fair.
Yeah, keep going.
So fair. So anyway, so I was doing a few classes at TCC and working and just trying to like figure stuff out and also live my like rebellious life while I'm
living back with your parents. Yeah.
And it just became like increasingly obvious that I was not going to follow their rules. And that's when I met Raymond.
Was he a positive influence at that point or a negative influence?
Oh my gosh. I wanted to date him because he was the first drug dealer I actually met face to face. It's true.
Oh my God, I love that.
He showed up.
If you know him now, you're
Oh
like,
my gosh.
you could never be a drug dealer.
See, it's so funny because like
But I don't know that version of him,
Yeah,
so I get it.
yeah.
That is wild. Okay, keep going.
The first time I met him, I was hanging out. There was this guy that I had known from church, actually. And he was one of the few people I knew, like, hadn't just met and like knew and trusted. And one of the few people who had an apartment around here that I could go to. And the first time I meet him, he shows up to this guy's apartment with a suitcase full of drugs. And I was like, oh, so dreamy.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
The
Makes me
delusion,
cringe.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But back then I was like, honestly, I used to watch episodes of like Intervention and stuff and be like, that's so exciting, which in hindsight freaks me out.
Yeah.
But so when this like big bad drug dealer shows up with a suitcase full of drugs and he's interested in me, I was like, oh my God.
I have arrived.
Yeah.
In my druggy addicted.
I was like, have you seen Queen of the South?
No, I haven't. But
Oh my gosh. I was like,
you wanted to be here.
I am going to be a kingpin. Like, so.
Of HEB.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
I still like I cringe.
But it just talks about like it goes back to like literally we all lived in delusion at that point. Like there's so many things that I was like I was gonna be like the top PR representative at this major firm, and I was like never gonna have kids, and I was gonna marry this guy. Oh, I was like man eater to the core. Like I was gonna rise in the ranks, and no one was gonna stop me. And now I'm like. Part of that, I'm kind of like, I can fight her off occasionally. But like, there's so much delusion in our minds in our adolescence that we think our parents know nothing. And like, no one can tell me anything because I know it all.
And they don't understand.
Vomit.
They don't get it.
Oh,
yeah.
And they totally did because they were a teenager at one point too. Yeah.
But when they say that, you're like,
no, you weren't.
That was like back in the olden days.
Yeah. They didn't even have drugs back then.
For real. No. So anyway, my parents sat me down and had a conversation like a week after I met Raymond. And was like starting to see him. He like actually started living with this guy whose house I would go over to. And my parents sat me down and they were like, it's clear you're not going to follow our rules. It's clear we have no control over you. So we think it's time you leave. And I know now that was a conversation that was a long time coming and was also just heartbreaking.
Oh, I physically feel ill thinking about having to do that. But like at some point you have to.
Absolutely.
Because you're like, there's nothing else I can do for this child and God's going to have to step in.
Yeah. And
are you grateful now that they did that?
Yes, because it forced me to truly evaluate what was important, and it took me a while.
Yeah.
It took me a year being out of their house, and for the first, I don't even know how long, first few months, I didn't speak to them.
Can I ask you an uncomfortable question?
Always.
At that point, what drugs were you using?
So at that point, it was mostly pills and a lot of ecstasy, just because that's what felt good.
No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, it is, but
there was never like meth or like those things, because those things like, or there was. Okay.
Not yet.
Okay. So that comes later.
I will say that. Yeah.
Okay. Because I want to talk about this because you have to be honest about it, because some people I'm sure are like, oh, she smoked pot, but like your parents don't kick you out of the house for smoking pot, or maybe they do, but like they could have, but like you don't abandon ship and give your whole life away over cannabis. You do that over methamphetamine because it has such a rabid grip on your life.
And at this point, I don't know that I would say I was like addicted to the pills. I was addicted to the lifestyle.
Yeah.
I was addicted to being high for sure. So there was like not a moment in the day that I wasn't high on weed.
Really?
Like that was just my life. Like that was like breathing air to me. Like if I wasn't high, I was like that something was wrong. And Raymond very quickly picked up on like, because he would smoke weed, and I don't know if he wants me telling his business, but he didn't really do
the drugs. He just sold them.
And he noticed very quickly that he was like, she more than likes to do drugs.
Yeah.
And he started, because we met and we were inseparable pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And we haven't spent much time apart since then.
Yeah. But the difference in who you are now is absolutely wild.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So you move out of your parents' house, you're dating Raymond, obviously you're having an issue with drugs. When did that change?
So about a year down the road, we were in our own apartment. I had begun reconnecting with my family here and there, but I still kept them at an arm's distance because I did not.
You weren't ready to give up the lifestyle.
That, and I didn't want them to know like the depths of my darkness. That to me was a different world, and they weren't welcome in it because I wanted to protect them from it.
Yeah.
But it was around that time that we were like, man, all the friends we think we have just want something from us. We're, going and getting payday loans and spending it all on drugs to try and flip it to try and make rent. And it just wasn't, we were not happy. We were not satisfied. We weren't safe. There had been a few instances where like I'd had a gun pulled on me, and
oh my God.
Raymond was like, that's never happening again. And there were so many things that happened that it was like, this is not like, we've had our fun.
And also how many times it could have gone south and God protected you from that.
Oh my gosh.
Like even in the midst of your sin, God was like, I'm going to stand in the gap because I'm not done with you.
Absolutely.
And this is not the finishing of your story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. And by that time, I mean, I had lost a piece of myself.
Yeah.
There were so many instances that I remember like picking up certain drugs and being like, this is not me.
Yeah.
And I remember there were several instances where we went and we bought drugs and we'd start doing them. And I'd look at Raymond and be like, we have to throw it away. We have to throw it away. I'm terrified. We have to throw it away.
Wow.
And we'd do it. And then I'd be like, man, why do we do that? Every time there was like this longing, but still it was like,
your body is like, don't do this.
Yes.
Yeah. Your spirit inside of you is like,
absolutely.
Yeah. So how did you get out of it?
So we were feeling that like, this is just not it. Like, what are we going to do this forever? Yeah. Like, if we don't change something drastically.
Yeah. You're going to end up dead or in prison.
Yeah. And we're like, this is just not like, nobody's happy. Nobody's enjoying it anymore. Like, it's not fun anymore.
Right.
And so, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. And I was so certain it was all my fault. And I sat down and I told Raymond, I was like, I have to repair things. Things have to be better. We have to change this. Like,
we can't do this anymore.
Yeah. And like I said, I was so convinced that she had cancer because of me, that it was the stress of everything, that it was even maybe punishment from God for me. Like, and at that point, Raymond had met my family. They weren't
thrilled.
Like, yeah, they weren't thrilled, but they would interact from time to time, and they knew where I lived. I didn't ever let them in, but like, I was starting to like open the door a little bit because I wanted so badly to have that relationship.
Yeah.
Because after a year with Raymond and learning him and his story and how he grew up, I came to realize like just how lucky and blessed and fortunate and spoiled I was to have the upbringing and the family that I did, that even despite everything I had done to them and all the hurtful words and things that I had said in my
Spiral.
yeah, that they still said, like, we're here when you're ready. And I know without a doubt that they continued to pray for me diligently, and they had their people praying for me and Raymond, which
I have literal chills on my body, because what an image of God's grace that, like,
absolutely.
I'm going to see past what you're doing currently. I'm going to love you through it. And the person that I likely loathe,
yeah,
I'm going to pray that God would change my heart for them and change their heart. That is like the epitome of the gospel, first of all. And second of all, of selfless parenting.
Yeah.
We need to write them a thank you letter.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I'm sure you have, but I'm going to write one on your behalf.
I haven't written them a letter, but I've had many a conversation with them about, like, and the longer I'm a parent, the more I'm like, I just can't thank you.
No,
I can't.
I can't thank you enough, because how did you do it?
Yeah.
How did you not, like, truly cut me off and not look back?
Well, and they will say that, like, my late teens and early 20s were some of the most sanctifying years for them.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like, God worked in them so much to be able to let me go and to be able to continue to pray for me and say, like, we're here when you're ready, but it's clearly not ready yet.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so you guys, your mom gets sick.
Mm-hmm.
She's still with us, thank God.
Mm-hmm.
God uses that to draw you home.
Mm-hmm.
The prodigal son, daughter.
Yeah.
Wow. There's elements of that I didn't know, and that it's really, really humbling to hear. So fast forward a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You get clean. Your life changes.
Yeah.
Enter Brenner. Baby B.
The best unexpected turn of events. I mean, he was such a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
So we had gotten clean. Like you said, we were doing better, but still not right with God. We would go to church and stuff. I was still smoking cigarettes. Not that that's, indicative of your walk with God, but I just still wasn't healthy.
Yeah.
But we started getting healthy. We started going to the gym. We got really into that and, like, really gave ourselves to, like, physical well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And the mental kind of followed. And I started seeing a counselor again. And we just were really working on, like, what do we want life to look like?
Mm-hmm.
And still living, like, a level of, like, just, like, surface Christianity.
Yeah.
And then I got pregnant, and at that point we were engaged, and there was a lot of fear. But my parents, again, just a huge picture of grace. That December, I got pregnant in January. That December, they had gifted me, Raymond, my sister, and her at the time boyfriend, long time friend of the family. They had said, okay, we're taking y'all on a trip, like a tour of Europe. And which is incredible, and it was like all the girls are going to stay together. All the guys are going to stay together.
They're like, we're doing this the right way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And so when we tell them that we're pregnant, which was horrifying because we're living with them at that time.
Oh gosh.
And now it's like, hey,
here's evidence that we were,
breaking your rules.
Yeah.
And they never once said an ill word about it. They didn't say, how dare you? You know better. They said, okay, we're going to figure this out. And so we talked, and
you were already engaged at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so they had said, what if y'all are already engaged? Y'all are already talking about planning a wedding. We didn't have, like, a date set or anything, but we were newly engaged. But they said, what if we plan a wedding? We have this trip coming up. What if we plan a wedding before the trip, call the trip your honeymoon, and go from there? And so that's what we did.
How incredible.
Yeah. I can't, you can't call that anything but God's grace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was such a gift.
So you guys are living with them at this point. Did you move out and then have Brenner? Were you still living with them? Okay.
So we moved out when I was like pretty heavily pregnant, into this little tiny 1-bedroom apartment, and that's where Brenner was born.
Love it.
It's interesting to think back on it, because we were still, like I said, like living like a surface level Christianity, and it was starting to deepen as we became parents. And but God still had a lot. I mean, he still is sanctifying us, but he still had a lot of sanctifying to do to get us to where we are now.
Yeah.
A lot of mistakes and shame in those years of just trying to figure myself out while I have this tiny little human dependent on me, and
also forgive yourself.
Still working on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all are. That's real.
Yeah. That's been one of the hardest things.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that my parents were so gracious makes it harder.
Because that's always such a conundrum, because you're like, why are you being so nice to me? I was horrible. Yeah, I feel that way sometimes about myself, and that self-deprecating.
Yeah.
I think some people really struggle with it, and some people just don't. Yeah. Like, I beat myself up about things all the time, and the Lord's like, I've already freed you from that.
Oh my gosh.
Like, stop putting that back on. I've already removed it.
Yeah. For
Wild.
sure.
So you have Brenner, and how long was it after having Brenner that you started trying to have another kid?
2 years.
Okay.
I had this idea in my head. Me and my sister are 3 years apart. And I had this idea in my head that like it needed to be 2 to 3 years. And that's what we wanted. I mean, when Brenner was born, I was like, oh my gosh, I could have 20 of you.
Yeah.
Like the best thing ever. I was it's so clear that I was created to be a mom. Like I
You
just
totally were.
Yeah, I love it. I'm obsessed with it. Maybe too much, but
I don't think so.
The twins would probably say otherwise. But anyway, so we started trying, and I'd known that I had PCOS since being really young. But I had no idea the impact it was going to make on my fertility. So we started trying and did the like typical year of trying, and then went to the doctor because it was like, hey, they say after a year.
Yeah.
She ran blood work and was like, yeah, you have typical PCOS. You can go to like a reproductive endocrinologist. So we started down that road, and we did a lot of testing, and they just were like, yeah, pretty much the only thing wrong is just your hormones are messed up, and here's all the options. And as we're weighing our options, I get pregnant. And I had really been like doing a lot to, trying to use all the holistic stuff to heal my body.
Girl, that was at that time when I was selling essential oils, right? And you were buying them like,
oh my gosh.
Cakes.
Yeah. I attribute part of my ability to get pregnant to
some of them really definitely do work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was what my body needed at the time.
Yeah.
So we get pregnant. I look back on it, and it's so, God's hand is there through all of it. I had taken 1 million pregnancy tests, 1 million. I literally bought them in bulk on a regular basis. And I was so used to taking it, doing that, like anybody that's been through infertility knows the like.
Yeah. I think I see a line.
Yes. Anyway, so I had done that 1 million times. And for some reason, I know now why, but for some reason I was like, I'm going to start recording myself when I look at them so that one day when it's positive, I can have that.
I can celebrate. Yeah.
That time is when it came up positive.
What? The first time you started recording it?
Yeah.
That's wild.
And that's to this day the only time I've ever recorded checking a pregnancy test. So we are like just over the moon. We're like, we did it. And we didn't even need medication. Like, we did it ourselves. I'm healed. Like, all the things. And we're just thrilled. But there's this hesitancy in my spirit from the beginning. And I just attributed it to infertility. I was like, it took us so long to get here. Of course I'm nervous. Like, and going through infertility, I learned a lot about loss because those two really go hand in hand.
Mhm.
And I was like, well, I just know more now.
Yeah.
When I
I'm
got
just
pregnant.
afraid because I know, and I'm anxious because of the things that I've read.
Yes. And at 17 weeks, we went in and we had an ultrasound, and there were the hesitations and the dropping of the face of the ultrasound tech, and the what's wrong?
Mm-hmm.
No,
And she can't tell you.
Yeah. And so the doctor comes in and says, I'm sending you to maternal fetal medicine. And so they did a big scan. It was hours.
Yeah.
In depth, looking at every inch of his body. And they tell us he has fluid on his brain. We think something might be wrong with his spine. We can't really tell. His left arm isn't moving and we don't know why. There was just a lot. It was it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this. There's so many things. So here's our options. We can do a fetal MRI. We can do an amniocentesis. Mm-hmm. We've done the genetic testing at the beginning that you do in pregnancy, and that all came back normal. But so we did the fetal MRI, and it was just more of the we found a little bit more in terms of specifics, but we have no idea the cause. We don't know what is going on. We can't confine it to a syndrome. And so because of that, we can't tell you the outlook. We don't know what's going to happen. So they did the amnio, which was terrifying.
Horrible. Those are so traumatizing.
Yeah. And I had no idea. Yeah, it was bad. But I think that was at 20 weeks that we did the amnio. The day I
remember reading your post. Yeah.
The day I turned 21 weeks, I remember a friend of ours after they found out that Matteo was sick, they had gifted us a Doppler. And I was using that all the time just to listen to his heartbeat. Mm-hmm. It was just
comforting.
Yeah. And it just, I don't know. I'd never, still to this day, I haven't had a pregnancy that I felt more connected to the baby while they were, I felt connected to all my babies, but this was I felt like I knew him. I knew his personality, and I knew kind of who he was already. And so a day or two before the day I turned 21 weeks, which was a Sunday, I had tried to get him on the fetal Doppler and couldn't. And I know, Raymond just kept saying, he's probably just turned around. You can't, it's one time. You get him all the time. You can't,
don't spiral.
Yeah. And I was like, something's up.
Mother's intuition is never wrong.
Yeah. And I remember the Saturday before that day, I was shopping with my mom, and I looked at her and I was like, do we buy clothes? Do we get the crib ready? Or do we wait? And she said, well, just wait till this next appointment. Wait till you get the results from the amnio. So then that Sunday, it just wasn't right. And I told him, I was like, we need to go in. It's been multiple days. I can't find him on the Doppler. I'm not okay.
Yeah.
And I've always been of the belief, I would much rather annoy the nurses
100%.
And the doctors than to be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So backing up a little bit, whenever I had first gotten pregnant, the song The Blessing had come out.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being very newly, within a few weeks pregnant. We had just found out, and hearing that song and listening to it on repeat. And I told Raymond, we were standing in our living room, watching the music video for it. And I was like, this is what I'm going to sing to him when I rock him to sleep. And so anyway, that Sunday, 21 weeks, and I tell him, I'm like, we have to go in. So, and I had an appointment in either that Monday or Tuesday. And he was like, you're about to go in for your appointment. Like, just hold off. And I was like, no, something's wrong. We have to go. So as we're pulling into the hospital, the blessing comes on the radio. And I told Raymond, I said, we're about to get really bad news. I know we are. And he was like, don't like read into it. That's just a coincidence. I was like, that's not a coincidence. That's God. So we go up to labor and delivery, and I have a long time friend that worked there, and she happened to be working, and I told Raymond, we're about to get really bad news. Mm-hmm. Everything's adding up. And so they triage us, and they have the person come and do the ultrasound while my friend, who was the labor and delivery nurse, is like sitting by us the whole time. And as they're doing the ultrasound, I'm looking and I don't see anything that looks normal. And my friend squeezes my hand a little bit harder. And obviously the lady can't say anything. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, what does that mean? Tell me, what do you see? And she does what I think is her trying to measure the heartbeat, and there's nothing. And I'm like, tell me, you have to tell me. And I'm freaking out, sobbing, crying. And she's like, you'll get the results in a little bit. And so she leaves, and my friend is like religiously checking the computer. She's like, the results haven't come in yet. But I know that she saw. I know that she knew.
Yeah. She wanted to be wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And so she kept checking, and then all of a sudden she was like, okay, the results are in. It says no fetal heart tones were found. And I lost it. Matteo felt like the redemption to all of the waiting. And I had no idea that the true like struggles were coming. Yeah. So they said, you can go home and wait, or we can induce you. And I said, I cannot go home carrying my dead baby.
No,
I can't do it. We need to have him. And so they hooked me up to all the medicine and started labor. And I couldn't get past a 3 or a 4. My body would not let go. And which
it should
obviously, yeah, it wasn't ready. It wasn't time. So they were like, why don't you get an epidural? Just even if your mind can't relax, that way your lower half can relax. Yeah. And so I did the epidural, and I just remember asking the nurse, I was like, I'm so scared I'm going to have him and not realize it. And then he's just going to be here. And so, I mean, God ordained all the nurses. I mean, really, our friend that worked there went and looked at the schedule for the days ahead and was like, she handpicked nurses for us. They were all believers. And the one that we had while he was born, I wrote letters of huge accolades for all the nurses to the president of the hospital, because I look back on those days with fondness.
Yeah.
Which is the only explanation for that is God's grace. Yeah. But yeah, he was born a little after 1 a.m. And they estimated by looking at him that he had passed maybe 5 days before that. Decomposition had already set in, which was
horrible.
Yeah, I had never been so angry at Satan. It's like, you did this to my baby.
Yeah.
So we held him and we sang over him, and my nurse, she was like, didn't you have a playlist you wanted to play? And so we did that, and we just sat with him, and I sang the blessing over him.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah, and I remember while I was laboring, telling Raymond, I was like, I'm not going to be able to let him go. How am I going to leave the hospital?
It's so hard.
And he was like, well, we'll, God will help us. We'll do it. And after we had spent a while with him, it was 1 a.m. and I wanted it when he was born. And by that point, it was probably 2:30 or 3. And I remember saying, like, I want my mom to come meet him. I didn't want everybody to come. I remember texting you and asking if y'all had let Ellie come meet Stokely. And what you had said, like, really resonated with me. And I was like, this isn't
how she meets her brother.
No. And so I didn't want that for Brenner. And he was only 4 at the time. So I couldn't, he had all these plans to have bunk beds with Matteo, and I couldn't do that to the image he had of his brother.
Me neither.
And at that point, he didn't know. Not to mention, it was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
So called my mom, and they were sleeping lightly. I mean, they had Brenner, but they knew where we were. And yeah, so we called her and asked if she would want to come up. And I remember before she walked into, which this was COVID, it was 2020, June of 2020. So like in the thick of everything. And they made all the exceptions for us. They were not supposed to allow visitors. Yeah. We were supposed to wear masks, like so many things. And they were like, if you want somebody to come up here, we will let them come up here. Like, we will do what it takes. And so before my mom walked into the room, I remember telling her, I was like, it's really hard. I want you to meet him, but it's really hard. And so she said, it's okay, I can handle it. And came in and met him. And I remember telling her, like, I don't want you to remember him like this.
Yeah.
And she was so gracious. Look at us. And so we all cried together for a while, and then she went home, and I just remember looking at Raymond and saying, like, I feel like it's time. I'm ready. I'm at peace. I'm ready for him to go. Like, this is not him.
No.
And so we told the nurses, and they came and took him, and they told us, like, all the, like, kind of the process of everything, that they would take pictures for us, and that we'd have his blanket and his hat and all those things.
Did you guys do the footprints?
Yeah.
That was like, that was really hard.
Yeah.
Like, I had a really hard time. Like, when they were like, it's time, I was like, and I was sharing with his birth.
Yeah.
So it was like we're both literally holding him, sitting on the bed, sobbing, like neither of us ready. But then they came in and said, we're going to do the feet print.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so thankful.
Yeah. Those are things
I can't.
Those are things that, like, I never would have thought of in the moment. And I'm so, so grateful for them. And, they told us they were going to take pictures. And my first instinct was like, no, don't take pictures. Yeah. No. And they said, we're going to take them. That's just what we do. Mm-hmm. We'll put them in an envelope. If you don't ever want to look at them, don't look at them. Right. But this is something you can't get back.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful. I mean, we looked at them all the time for the first couple years.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
So after that was all the logistics of everything.
The pictures of you guys like with Brenner are the most beautiful pictures when you guys, we all burying him at those photos?
Not yet. Brenner wasn't there.
No. But in the pictures on Facebook, I remember so clearly I think y'all were at
his grave, probably.
And that, oh my God. They're the most beautiful pictures I've ever seen because they're just beautiful. But like, also I like had to excuse myself from where I was and like go into the bathroom and sob.
Yeah.
Because it was just like, it's cruel.
Yeah. I mean, he has like trucks and cars and stuff on his gravestone, because that's how Brenner plays with his brother.
Right.
Which, like you said, it's cruel.
It's cruel.
My like motto for the next few years was like, it wasn't ever supposed to be this way.
No. You never longed for heaven like you did now, though.
No, never. And still to this day, I mean, I love being here with my family and with my kids that I have here, but he is always missing.
Mm-hmm.
Always. And this is what, like, I've said to several people who, like, you know, I've talked with about grief. Like, I still feel joy, but every joy, there's like a little
cloud over it. Yeah, absolutely. Like, yeah, and I didn't carry Stokely, but we feel the same way. Dylan and I talked about that on his episode too. Like, we talk about how, like, people ask us, like, how many kids do you have? And my initial gut reaction is always 3.
I always say
I have 2 here, and 1 is with Jesus. And, like, it never feels right.
No.
Ever. It's like, he should be here.
Yeah. But at the same time, Matteo has done so much. He's taught me so much. His
life meant so much and impacted so many people.
And still does. I mean,
same. Yeah, literally.
So his middle name is Kayla. So Kayla means completion. And I remember sitting in the hospital being like, okay, we had decided Matteo. Mm-hmm. Like, that was decided before. But we were trying to figure out what his middle name would be. And we came across Kayla. And it was so, like, his purpose is, like, his life is complete. There's no, like, people say all those, like, cliche things about a life cut short, gone too soon. And he should be here.
Right.
But his days were numbered before the earth began. Mm-hmm. Like, there is no, his life was cut short. It was cut short for what I wanted.
Right.
But it wasn't, like, it was always supposed to be that way.
His life was complete.
Yeah. And he has fulfilled his purpose.
Yeah. It's the same way.
Yeah.
But in the thick of that, I couldn't reason.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I was even watching y'all go through it. It, like, was triggering for my own, like, loss of, like, I would not wish that pain on my worst enemy.
No.
But God used it for my good.
Absolutely.
And it's wild to say that. And that is something that I feel like, as believers who experience loss, we do have that one hope that people that experience loss that don't know the hope of Jesus, like, that is what keeps us going. That is what keeps us from being bitter women who feel sad every time someone announces that they're pregnant. You know, like, how I'm still able to celebrate other people's joy when they have children. And I know that that is not a reality for us. You know what I mean? Like, these are things that could absolutely wreck you and take the wind out of your lungs.
Yeah.
But God used it for my good.
Absolutely.
And used it for your good.
Yeah.
And then blessed you with twins.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I will say, once you lose a baby, people know you as the woman who's lost a baby. And it's a blessing because people have come to me many a time after they've lost a child.
Right.
And I've been able to just, I don't know, it's hard to say minister to them because I'm, like, in no position of power. But I've been able to, like, share Matteo's story and share just the hope that we have and how I can talk about Matteo happily and not just be an utter wreck every time.
Yeah.
And I've had women who are not believers come to me and say, how?
Nothing within me all but Jesus.
Yeah.
Literally.
Like, I would not be here but for the grace of God.
Literally.
Like, I would not have survived that. I mean, I barely did.
Yeah.
But
do you feel like, Dylan and I were talking about this, like something like broke inside of me that was never mended. And it wasn't like God couldn't mend it. It was like something changed in us.
It's not supposed to be mended.
No. And that I wish I could explain that. Like, I don't want it to be mended. Like, I don't want that pain to ever go away.
Yes.
I want to remember him. I want to remember the love that I felt for a child that was not my own, but was mine.
Yeah.
That was never my own.
Yeah.
Was always God's. Was always intended for me to open-handedly give him back to Jesus. Like, I don't want to forget.
Yeah.
I don't want to be mended from that.
No.
Ever.
Because the pain is just, it's indicative of the love.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Man. It's so hard because it's hard to explain that, like, that is a piece of me that I don't want to be the girl that I was before I lost him.
Mm-mm.
I'm never that girl again. I'm the mom of Stokely who is longing for heaven and counting the days until my children are all together, you know?
And not just for the reunion.
No.
But for the end of death.
Yeah.
For when God wipes every tear away and when he finishes it once and for all, and we can not literally, but like look Satan in the face and be like, I told you
there was going to be victory through this.
I told you. You may feel like you had a victory in this, but
no,
you've lost.
God gets the final word.
Yeah.
And he gets the final word over our children. And he brought you guys out of that with, I think, even a deeper appreciation now for the kids that you have on earth.
Oh my gosh.
Like, we talk about that all the time. Like, we like they are everything to us because we know what it's like to lose one. And we know how short it could be. And we know, how quickly things go. And so now you are a mom who has 4 children and you have 2 beautiful twin babies who are literally the funniest human beings ever and so freaking cute.
Oh my gosh.
With the best hair, by the way, which is just rude. Like, how do they have such good hair?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It must be the Mexican genes.
Probably.
I don't
know. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
But what is motherhood after Matteo? What does that look like for you?
That's a loaded question. It is such deep gratitude. I mean, cuteness aggression.
Oh, do I know it?
I know you do.
Yeah.
You've shown it to my child.
I'm like, I want to bite your whole face.
It's like, I mean, it's kind of like a silly relation, but it's like that, but it's just like an unspoken, like almost like gotta roll gratitude.
Yeah.
It's so deep.
Yeah.
And so like, I cannot put words to it. And it's so full of God's grace and kindness. I mean, looking in the face of my twins every day.
Yeah.
They are literally walking manifestations of God's kindness to me.
If I could have named Campbell something, it would have been that phrase.
Yeah.
Because I look at him and I'm like, Stokely brought this.
Yeah.
Matteo brought the twins. Like, that loss shoved me down into the depths of God's mercy and grace.
Yes.
And from it came the ability to love another child after that and to appreciate like what a gift it is to be a mom. A gift that was not promised and has been taken from a lot of people. And that, I knew you were going to say that, but I just wanted to hear you say it. Like, it really does. It deepens your gratitude in ways that nothing else can.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't do it every month now because they're almost 2, but every month I had posted, like 5 months of miracles, 6 months of miracles. And that's not just like some cute Instagram post.
No, it's an actual, this is a miracle.
Of me waking up and enjoying 2 living, breathing miracles that continuously point back to God's grace and God's kindness to me. I mean, just that was one thing I don't think I understood before Matteo was God's kindness to me. He was the almighty God who pointed the finger and said, you do this.
Just.
Yes. He was the disciplining father.
Have you ever heard that song Just and Just As?
No.
It's by Penny and Sparrow, and it is the best song ever, and you'll have to listen to it. Yes. But it talks about how part of those song says, I'm just, but I'm just as loving. Mm-hmm. And he says something about how I never wanted to make you bleed, but you'll come limping homeward. And he says, there's blood on the couch, but we're going to clean it up together.
Yeah.
Like, it's this image of like, yes, I'm just, and yes, I deserve, praise and worship and those things, but I'm loving, and I'm going to get down into the pit with you, and I'm going to clean it up with you.
Yeah.
And I didn't get that.
No, I don't. There's a depth of understanding that only comes with suffering.
100%. 100%.
And honestly, I think some people are never meant to understand that depth. Mm-hmm. And in some ways, I'm envious of them because there's pain that they've never felt before. Mm-hmm. But in other ways, I'm so grateful that I've experienced it because of everything that it's taught me and the perspective it's given me and the fact that I can live every day and say, I have done nothing to earn this or deserve it. And yet God has been so gracious to me in giving me all that I have.
It also makes everything that is just stupid, it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Like, that's what Dylan and I talk about. I think that's honest to God why our marriage has been as strong as it has been after the fact, is because we just stopped caring about the BS.
Yeah.
It's like, we don't care anymore.
Yeah.
I literally don't care to fight with you about dumb stuff anymore because, like, I know what suffering looks like and this ain't it.
Yeah.
So we're going to just move on along. You know what I mean? Like, that, I appreciate that so much about the suffering that we endured because I know that it solidified us as a couple and as parents and as believers. Like, I've tasted and seen the bitterness of what sin causes. Mm-hmm. And I have also tasted and seen the faithfulness and goodness of God.
Even at the same time.
At the same time. Okay, well, that we ended there. Like, we have to end it there because this is just, I don't think anyone can stand much more of us talking about this because it's such a heavy topic. And I genuinely like, first of all, I want you to hear me say that I admire you as a mom, that your ability to love your children so well and so patiently and so kindly is a huge thing. And you do your job with absolute like integrity. And I adore you. I want you to hear me say that. And I also am so thankful that we get it, you know?
Absolutely.
And that we both are on the other side of it saying, yeah, the Lord's so good and he still loves us. Mm-hmm. So thank you for sharing everything that you shared today. Yeah. Thank you for being honest and raw and willing because people needed to hear it.
Yeah.
I love you.
Love you.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to end it on that. I love you guys. Please follow along. And Bethany on Instagram will put her thing in the caption. But I hope that you hear everything that was shared today and that it resonates with you, but that it also reminds you that even in the pit of where you are, that God is still faithful and that he is ever for you. Mm-hmm. Bye.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to my mom's podcast, Let's Just Be Real. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, like, follow, rate, and review so you don't miss any of these honest and amazing stories. For all the behind-the-scenes content, go follow my mom at Jordyn Swingle on Instagram. And as always, let's just be real.